and welcome to the Coffee Club, episode 6. Rebecca's back from Disneyland. So
World.
She should have stayed forever.
Eric and I are going to have to struggle to figure out how to talk to each other again. That's always so painful. So, moving on to more positive notes.
Already kicking. Well,
This morning we adjusted a little bit thanks to a all-day workshop that tried Rebecca, and we had no pre-chat whatsoever about what we were going to talk about. So goodness knows where it'll go. But let's start with highlights. Highlights of the week, Eric.
Oh, I've got some interesting ones. One was just today, and one was last week. And one of the highlights for me is the joy I find in synthesis and creating. Like I've had the fun of doing a little bit of world building and creating some case study like environments that people are going to get to play in and learn a lot. And I found that both a lot of fun and creating. Like I just forgot how much I enjoy creating scenarios and spaces that people can learn in. And it's just a different framing. It captures a little bit of the role playing and game mastering that I used to enjoy, but it also captures my day job creativity and the joy of agility pieces. And then today was just I won't name names, but I got the chance to connect more deeply with somebody I look forward to working with, and just had this delightful 2-hour conversation that was high energy the whole time. And those are the ones that really light me up. So I always love when I find another person that I get to have those kinds of conversations with. Personally, more dancing in the desert and time on a beach and beautiful sunsets and moonrises and all the things that come with living near nature. So how about Rebecca next?
sounds like a lot of sand.
There was a lot of sand in all the right places, like underfoot.
I'm gonna pass on going there.
That's there for you.
Yeah, I mean, I had an amazing time in Disney World
Oh,
because Disney World is way better than Disneyland. And got to go to all the parks with my step kiddo and husband, and so that was really fun. And then started settling back into work. It was really nice. Actually, last week I think was the first week in years that I haven't somehow tied a personal vacation to some sort of a work thing or done work while I was on that vacation. So it was really, really nice just to actually turn everything off, not literally not think about it, not answer things. I haven't done that in a very, very long time. So that felt good. So coming back was I still feel like I'm trying to come back all the way and get back into things. But from a work perspective, been really nice just trying to think about the future and the current all at once. And what the steps are to get to a really positive future at work. And then um just trying to get wrapped up for Summit, guys. Summit is fast and furious. Immersion week is next week, so that's happening. All sorts of big things. And for world building, I didn't get to world build, I think the way that you mean, Eric, but I did find a new PC game called Fabledom that is very fun.
Fabledom, huh?
Yeah. You build like your own fairy tale land. It's fun. Mark of the pondering face.
I was pondering a Babledom game and thinking about whether it involved languages and fish.
So far, mine involves princesses and castles. No fish yet.
I'll start with personal. Personal was a long and rambling discussion about BDD, software factories, and domain-specific languages with my kids late last night.
Oh. Did you do shots like every time you said an acronym or something? Because that would be fun.
Well, it was this weird thing where I've been zoning out gaming for a bit, and daughter Sammy's down for the week. She's got a wedding that she's working, and walked out from the PC. She and Max are sitting on the couch chatting, and she goes, "Dad, you got any good books on BDD?" And you explain what the acronym. Yes, I
Wait,
love to.
which kid was this? Was Max or
No, this is Sammy
that's Sammy? Okay, interesting.
because she has spent the day working with one of the guys on her team, introducing it, and he's taught her to play a little bit with a sample scenario he's built. And she's like, this is pretty cool. And so Max, of course, chimes in and says, what the hell's BDD? From which point we go to what's a domain specific language. And then in order to explain a specific language, I can never escape going back to the Software Factories book, which trigger for it all. So it's nice to prove to my kids that I've still got something inside technical.
It's also nice. I like those kid moments where they realize you're a full human person and not just the part of you that raised them.
um,
There's that, but Sammy was kind of instrumental in getting this whole series set up, and I've gotten to know her a little bit through that. So,
Sure.
and still occasionally rescues me. She rescued me last Saturday for SPCs Unleashed. I was
Ah,
in pain,
That's kind
something
of her.
wasn't working, and I was like, okay, Dad, I'm on Discord, share your screen. 20 seconds later, problem solved.
so how did you explain body dysmorphic disorder?
Body dysmorphic disorder. How did you come up with that one that fast? Have you practiced?
It's just as prevalent in mental cases as software mental cases.
Well, it made for an interesting three-way discussion because, of course, she's a tester, and
Yeah.
Max is not into the technical side of life. But I mean, for me, BDD, the whole idea, and of course, we had to go down the riffs of what is gherkin and cucumber and how they related. Um, but for me, BDD is always going, how do I get a common language that a user can read and respond to and give feedback from, a stakeholder can, a tester can probe and expand on, and a developer can talk and understand the build to. And if you can get that same crystal clear language between all three of them, life's great. Um, and that for me, it's always Gojko Adzic, specification by example, right? Here's an intended behavior, and here's an example of it in action, or many examples of it in action. And that
What did
then,
you
sorry, go.
I was just curious what you answered her about the book suggestion.
The book suggestions for me, it's always two books. The Cucumber book. I love the Cucumber book because it just lays out the layering of your automation infrastructure behind a really well synthesized set of examples of Gherkin. And there's probably much newer books been written, but I've never seen any packaged Cucumber book. You can hand it to a non-technical person and say, stop reading here. Or you can hand it to a technical person and say, avoid yourself a lot of pain by reading the rest of it. But then the backside of that is specification by example, just to bring about the heart of, I think BDD is a requirement and problem exploration tool, and they're collaborative. You guys seen much of Gojko? You
Yeah.
ever been on one of his courses?
Nope.
Or if you ever get the chance, he's a brilliant trainer. I went, now, he was out in Australia teaching his specification by example course. And I'd used a bit of BDD when I was still a developer. I'd been coaching people using it for years. And I went, I'll just go on the course to see how he teaches it and try and pick up some ideas and nuances for bringing it to life for people. And then I spent 2 days going, I knew nothing about BDD. I entered believing I was a reasonable expert. I exited having felt a lot of regret for all of the
Done in your life. Those are the best kind of ones.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Um Gherkin has been one of those ways of translating things that I feel people get overly passionate about if it's the right thing to do or not, rather than I look at it as like try and just see if it fits you or not. Um, I feel like I've ended up in like far too many discussions with teams and POs about the should we even do this rather than what does it hurt to try. I don't know if you have that much or not.
No,
Not really.
not really.
Oh, maybe I just have a lot of feeling passionate teams. The moment I can get people to just say like, why don't you just try? and then dig deeper if you need to dig deep. Really cool things start to happen, and it tends to be that, at least in my experience, like nobody needs to go take a course or become the best person at doing it in the world. It's more of that alignment discussion, like, and but I find so many reasons. This is actually hooked to something I had written to you guys earlier in the week of why some things are so hard to get people to try to do, and from a product perspective or a team perspective is like there's this like visceral action to like trying to be on the same page versus just doing the next piece of work. And I have not understood that.
I
It sounds
definitely
like
know I've definitely sensed that resistance plenty of times, and I wish I had the language I used earlier today. I might have to go dig it out of the transcript actually, but I was mapping back the human emotions that make it hard to change: fear, apathy, and just some of the things that are reasons why changes don't take root, and how hope and joy and some of the positive emotions that we can bring as thoughtful, caring humans to a change experience can actually help overcome those and create a space where people are willing to try stuff and willing to lean in. And I was being empathy interviewed essentially about agility and change. So it was really, really fascinating hearing myself talk about it with completely out of left field set of prompts compared to what I normally get prompted with.
hmm,
So I'm excited to go back and read my own transcript on that one.
yeah,
But I also look back to the influence, especially you and Cheryl have had, Rebecca, on me over the power of joy, and some of the also Christine Hudson and a handful of other people I should look at and highlight the just positive energy that can be brought into change. And sometimes that's actually all you need.
yeah, yeah. I do wonder why that sometimes is. Um, like I almost feel like you need like a team of people where you're very intentionally being like, if I'm noticing that the other people are starting to not be on the positive side, like I'm going to be the positive person, and you're doing that like for each other consistently. Because I do agree, like that's where trying comes from. To back to like trying to do, basic, just give something a shot. Like give one then a shot. Give writing a story a shot. Give whatever a shot. That one's the really simple, like, just try something and see if it makes your life a little bit easier, and then talk to each other about it. Um, it sounds so simple, and those are some of the, like, team-based things that, for whatever reason, I end up having these, like, longer feeling debates about with people. Like, "Oh, you're adding something," or "It's burdening me," or, "Okay." Oh.
Uh, I I also see, I mean, the trend among too many coaches of pushing so hard on doing agile right
Oh, yeah.
that we kill that sense of discovery and joy of trying new things.
Yeah, 100%. That's why this particular use case that you brought up triggered that thought for me so hard, Mark, is like, this is literally like it's a technique. Give it a shot. And I or don't, like, but your reasoning for don't isn't like just a pure rejection of the word given, the word when, and the word then. Like that's silly. And yet it happens.
That is, I'm torn between two worlds.
Go for it.
Oh,
Well,
there's my quote.
I feel like I'm going to drag us way back out of touchy feely, bringing
Do
joy
it.
into just practical stuff.
I don't care about joy. Get back there.
I'll bring us back to joy. Don't worry, that's my job here.
The practical side of it, and the biggest thing I took out of Gojko is that he doesn't start with giving,
Mhm.
right? His whole teaching about it is you start with examples. And in a BDD session, you may never write the words given then. And the way he structured his course, like the beginning of the course, he handed us the rules for blackjack and said, write some scenarios.
Mm.
And we had a crack at some scenarios, and then he tore them to shreds. And then he went, let's start like this. Let's start with just lists of combinations of cards and what's true. And you looked at lists of combinations of cards and what was true. And then he went, oh, when you can start to see patterns in the combination, it looks like there might be some domain concept called a blackjack or a hard or soft ace. Because when you have examples of two aces and a 10 versus two aces and a 2, different things are going on. And that you can resort your lists really easily because it's just lists of real examples. And then eventually you go back and go, well, can I describe what's happening in examples? And that pattern leads you to a really rapid discovery discussion because it's what's true, what's true, what's true. Can we just have an example? And you're not bogged down in, you're just getting lots of crystallized examples of truth. And
Yeah,
It's like,
and I sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that's actually back to like the old fitness attitude
well,
and building tables.
if you look at SBE and one of the things he teaches in his course is Gherkin's not always the right answer. There are some scenarios that are better expressed using a fitness style and some scenarios that are better expressed using Gherkin. And
That
book
right
plays
there
well
is the
for us.
nuance that I think that's the nuance that gets lost in too many practices and how they're taught.
I don't I guess the source that I see of the tissue rejection is not in the use cases of I already have I have a fundamental table stakes kind of a solution that I need to build and I need to make that true. And I'm gonna test first to get there. It's more the sort of like the urgency rejection or the urgency problem of I don't want to take the time to think about what the answer could be or should be, and therefore I'm not willing to have the tough conversation to begin with to do test first because that means that I have to prioritize thinking in a different way than I have been so far and admitting that I haven't thought through that far ahead and all those things. Like the same reason you get tissue rejection in my mind around building a roadmap or
Or
sitting down
PI
and having
objectives or a lean business case or
right. And I just find that I find that conflict so interesting is I think at a fundamental root, like people do understand that like not doing that is going to cause more work in the future than it could have been if you time now to be on the same page and do test first or build a plan or have a vision, whatever. Um, but there's some sort of like human, I don't know what it is, but I do think it's human of the difference between mapping towards something that you have certainty in and not.
I think there's a parallel back to, I'll go to a Weinbergism. My favorite Jerry Weinberg quote is "Know how's great and know when's better." And I think often coaches fall into the trap of going, "Here, I've got to teach you everything you've got to know." Back to your comment about doing agile perfect, as opposed to what's the moment when you can help people understand the cause of some pain they're in and offer them something that's going to help with the pain. And I almost think with a lot of techniques, it's not so much about bringing joy as bringing pain relief.
Mhm.
I had the fun of watching a group interact with Eric's PI objectives workshop yesterday.
ooh, I haven't heard about this yet. I can't wait to hear.
Things we might have talked about before the show.
Breaking news.
And by the way, great feedback, Eric. Went really well. It was fun to watch. Created a great conversation. But
Not helpful. I need to know what's broken.
He's just saying that because we're live.
I've got timing notes for you as well. That's probably the interesting piece of it. But have you seen his workshop, Rebecca? Or yeah,
I spied a bit.
okay.
I
So
don't think
you
I've
spied.
seen all the but I've spied a bit.
So
Mark might be the only person in the world other than the test group that has actually seen it run, though. So,
but what's great is you start with why. Why do we do PI objectives? And this is a group that's PI7 planning tomorrow. And if they break format, you designed it to run team by team by team. They ran out of time to do it with all the teams, so it was the RT and the Scrum Master. But the discussion that was triggered just by your provocations about why we write PI objectives was awesome. And
that means it's working.
that then
That's
set
the
the
whole point.
scene for engaging with everything else. And I think BDD, I never push BDD on people early. They're drowning in so many things to get their heads around, but there's a moment when it's going to cause them an immense amount of pain relief. And that's a great time to start the conversation.
Literally never? That's not been like the first thing that you've focused
No,
on for anybody?
no.
I
I've only
would
had
say
one that went first and it was with a marketing team because they were already so hypothesis driven and we're literally just needing like the step that would bring them together as a team to make those hypotheses of the team instead of separate, that they were like, oh my gosh, this is the winning first thing for us.
Do you think of things like future perspectives and good acceptance criteria at a larger feature level and things like that as being BDD equivalents? Or are you
It,
specifically talking about Gherkin BDD?
in all honesty, I think I love Gherkin. I love the specification by example variation of BDD because it actually gives you like a conversation template. It creates a conversation arc naturally, but at the same time, usually the first place I introduce it is features. Right. So one of the things I know is most agile teams in the beginning they write terrible stories, and
Hmm.
you look at their backlog and it makes you want to cry. But if you over obsess on it, really bad stuff can happen. That can shift over time.
Yep.
But if you introduce BDD for features is awesome. And then you can start to take yourself down the path of going, I've got a feature with lots of good BDD. Those scenarios and examples might be a good way of starting to rethink the way I find my stories.
Hmm. So
Um,
I
yeah.
asked my question because like it for me, the BDD technique I use most often is PI objectives. I think of PI objectives as BDD for your PI. Before I invest this 10 weeks and a couple $1 million, I want to declare what success looks like, understand how I'm going to feel about it, and have a conversation among stakeholders to make sure it's the right direction. I say the same thing about a lean business case and kind of the early phases of the Kanban for the portfolio. Is it's BDD for your big investments. Is it specifically examples? Is it specifically Gherkin? No. I would never write a PI objective as a Gherkin statement. But this outcome first approach to understanding what success looks like and feeling it out and trying to get both emotional and specification like agreement and alignment around it is pervasive for me and is like the root of most execution skills and agility. Like,
Uh,
let's take various
yeah.
scopes and align on what success looks like and do it. So that's where I was kind of asking the question because, like, as an automation approach, sure. As a story level or feature level way of understanding work, great. Fully support it. But it's the pattern, the mindset of that I value most and that I still find people struggle with is that willingness to slow down to align on what success is going to look like. And I pulled up a quote that I can't find the original source of, nor can ChatGPT, but it's one of my favorites is weeks of coding can save you hours of planning.
Yes. We're
Hmm.
100% aligned on that. I just think when I'm at start with the outcome, I've transcended BDDs, just a layer of unpack.
Hmm.
You're looking very thoughtful about it.
Just
And
listening.
I feel like I can't like get through a conversation without BD without making sure like some credit falls to Dan North and Liz Keogh and that crew that kind of shaped it. So I have to do a little bit of name dropping there, I guess. And there are others who wrote the book.
The
What
cucumber
was her
book?
name? Yeah,
Matt Wynne, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, Matt Wynne.
yeah. Because that whole crowd, mostly out of London at the time.
Well, Chris Matts lays claim to given when then.
Hmm.
He was around some of it, and he and Liz did a lot of the origins that I remember around stakeholder stories, which is the in order to versioning that makes BDD a lot easier for things where you can't figure out why the user wants something because it's actually the chief security officer that wants it on behalf of the user, um, or also known as the I want somebody else to do things stories, which are legit. Like as it's like I can go through the dance of saying as a user I want to fill out two-factor authentication because I want my information to be secure, but the real reason is that the corporate governance team wants users to do two-factor authentication in order to avoid lawsuits and data breaches.
Yeah.
And so like that's where story format often breaks down is like you go through contortions to get it to the actual who wants it.
Oh, I'm a
But
absolute.
anyway, that's not where we're at.
Well, that's a complete sidetrack about love-hate relationships with, as I won't say that, tools and not traps.
Um, so
I don't
maybe
know.
rewind. Go ahead.
I don't know why this conversation is taking me there, but my like all of my uncles except for my dad all went into computer software, and all of them just have these stories where they like there was no bigger joy than being an engineer, like a mathematical software engineer in the 60s and 70s for them. And it was just, you've got these crazy problems. No one in the world knows how to solve them. You work together as a team and you just like try stuff and solve them. And when I when I see the languages and the techniques, I I almost feel like all we're really trying to do is get back to that. Is like the pure joy of like nerding out over something that is difficult and being able to do that with other smart people that we respect. Um I'm sometimes at a loss like what what the thing is that made it so that now we have to have 50 books to be able to just get in a room together and like nerd out about a really tough problem.
Yeah, I would actually argue that it's the challenge for me. The challenge is what are the implications if it's a really tough problem that other people have already solved?
Fair.
And like back in that era, other than the cases of parallel evolution, which are legit because we didn't have instantaneous transfer of knowledge around the planet in the same ways, some of those people were building that in the situations you're talking about. Um, the like challenge is we have so many dang tools available, and the people who don't use those tools are causing harm in some cases. Like, I don't know that I feel safe with developers who refuse to use automated testing at any point. But you still have to learn automated testing somewhere and get good enough at it that you can use automated testing in production environments.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Um, I don't know that I feel safe with developers who aren't willing to sit down and have a conversation about my business outcomes because there's a lot of money of exposure at the scale of programs we're running today. And if they don't understand my business outcomes, are they even going to go solve the right hard problem? And can I trust that they're spending my money wisely in that room solving hard problems? Or are they solved problems that don't matter?
Right.
So that's where like the tooling side of this comes into it's like and not tooling like ALM tools, but like the many different practices that are part of a well-rounded tool set. And the experts in the room, like the truly joyful conversations, some of the ones we have, the ones I had today, are the ones where people are fluent and facile, like they have good faculty or facility with all of these different tools, and they can come up. We mention a model, we connect on it, make sure we have the same understanding of the model. It takes 3 seconds, and now we've just loaded this huge dose of brain power and alignment in that we can keep building on,
Hmm.
as opposed to going back to first principles in every conversation. And like you get a group of experts together, and the amount of jargon and shorthand and all of that is overwhelming if you're not a part of it, but delightful and eye-opening and accelerating if you are a part of it. And that's the gradient that I'm always wondering about. It's like if I have it's here as I look at working habits, like physical work habits in different countries, and the different professional labor trade-offs for cost trade-offs versus tooling trade-offs. Would you rather hire 8 people with shovels, or would you rather hire 2 people with a backhoe? Depends on the job, depends on the labor cost and the machine cost. Um, the right answers aren't always obvious for me, but the need to consider the landscape and the valuing of tools and knowledge will never go away for me.
Yeah, all that is fair. I and true. I think the I've been thinking a lot lately about um I mean it's all tied to joy for me, so sorry Mark, but team and like
We're just going to
the
call Mark anti-joy from here on.
right is anti-joy. Um just what it is that I am starting to see lost in that word. And it concerns me a bit, or I'm starting to see like kind of two directions where there's people who are like, just give me a order and I will go and do that solo, and then I'll bring back something, which is really different than like there's a worthy problem or some worthy next level of an existing solution that we would be better at if we work together to solve it. And I have seen a mix of like there's people who are actively resistant of like I don't actually care about getting all the context so that I can make the right decision. I just want you to tell me what the right decision is and then I will just go execute it. Versus there's another group of people who are like, no, I actually like I'm invested in the vision and the future, and I believe that working together to get to that vision and future is the right thing. And I don't know where that will head, but I do think it's at an interesting point right now with the with like I do think one path will slightly win over the other. And I know which path like I would personally prefer, but I do see a large prevalence of just just tell me what to do. And my I you pay me money, I will just go do it, which I didn't see as much a few years ago.
I've seen it on and off in various software environments forever, but I want to come back to the part you said a worthy problem.
Yeah.
And that phrase really jumped out at me as you were talking because I also can look at a lot of the team practices that we push and we say, oh, you should do it this way, pairing, mobbing, whatever. And those things are miserable if they're applied to unworthy problems. And we
Yeah.
don't, it's like it's same thing with appreciating at a distance. Gojko's like BDD or specification by example isn't right for everything, given when then or Gherkin's not right for everything. And it's like, should you pair on something that's really straightforward and complicated at best and definitely not complex? It's like, arguably, no. You're actually just wasting people's energy and brain power and forcing additional collaboration on people who may or may not love it.
But I guess from the future perspective, how often are those things actually the things that a computer could be doing or should be doing?
I don't know, wiring up an ORM for the 48th time in a system. Like some of the stuff you just got to do. And it's like, okay, I'm building another component that maps to this data object and it's automated to a certain extent, but I still got to configure the automation, put it in there, write the XML, YML, YAML, JSON, whatever that does the mapping.
Yeah, I don't mean it's a never, but what percentage of that work should it be for the team? And I'm not saying I think there's a right answer. I do see two clear paths, and I worry if the thought work, because I see this happening like in certain companies and certain teams that I've met with. It's not my job to think about the vision or the intent or what we're trying to shoot for. It's my job just to deliver. And the thing that they're working on is not the stuff that you're describing. This it so and in some cases, it's being seen as like, "Man, isn't it great that, like, we don't have to all be on the same page and people will just execute what this one person says." And that's I don't maybe you guys don't see it as much or you're not seeing it or, but I have been
I'm,
seeing that phrase more often since, like, during and, like, and COVID.
I see it a lot, but I don't know that I've seen it more.
Hmm.
It's very like it's one that I've just seen around me for 20 years in various concentrations in various companies. And I think I get sad when I see it happening more in companies that I love.
That's fair.
Um, and that's a little different. It's a little different than like the forcing of agile practices into places where they're not necessary, like plumbing and yak shaving and things like that, where it's like, yeah, we got to do these other 28 things to get ready to solve the really hard problem. But I think the one you're talking about is real. And I don't know. I often find myself going back to Herzberg's two factor as a lens on this one of what are the demotivators and what are the actual motivators. And am I aware of which demotivators are actually keeping people from engaging? And have I put the motivators in place to actually pull them forward? And both are necessary and they're not opposites. They're just two different categories of things.
Yeah.
Uh, just to put it out there, I think one of the pieces of that puzzle is if you go back to the guys who brought Agile into being, we're talking about highly passionate, nerd out developers trying to bring to life a world where amazing things could happen when you got together small teams of highly passionate, nerd out developers. And not every developer in the world is a highly passionate, nerd out developer. And in fact, when you get into the enterprise or corporate world, there's a lot of people who don't fit that mold. And that's one of the challenges that you have with it is like so much of it is based on, form a team around a compelling problem to solve, um, give them the space to go forth and solve it creatively. But if you've got a bunch of devs who just turn up to work because they got to collect a paycheck and they're actually really happy with that life, then a lot of the constructs of agility are going to struggle with.
look at it as agile or not agile. I think that's where I'm struggling in this conversation is it's like if I were I think there are certain businesses or solution scapes where it's actually okay to like maybe it's okay to have people who are executing things, right? Um I also feel that there are solutions where that's not okay, and what I don't s what maybe as we're, like as I'm listening, maybe one of the things that could be taken more critically is that opinion-based, like, what type of a dev do you wanna be? What type of a team do you wanna be on? What type of a PO do you wanna be? What type of a PO do you want a team for? And then where are the solution sets in the organization that suit that? Um, and I think the value stream lens and the solution lens is also a lens, but I do think there's a really important lens of if you have work that requires shovels, like 6 shovels, and you have 6 people who wanna work on shovels, then and a PO who's great at giving them dirt, like, okay, there's probably, in a large enough organization, there are probably plenty of things that need that.
Yeah, although you
Yeah.
then jump to the question that says if the work needs 6 shovels, does it really need a PO? Um, but it plays back to like
Yeah.
Hackman had this great story in leading teams, and there's an analogy that very popular in agile. I got taught it early in my agile journey. I used it, which was the story of the guy going for a walk and he passes a stonemason building a wall and he says, "What are you doing?" The stonemason says, "I'm feeding my family." And then he keeps walking and he gets to another stonemason building another wall. Obviously, it's an English story. And the stonemason says, "I'm building the most amazing wall that's ever been built in this part of the country." And then he, keeps walking and he finds yet another stonemason building a wall and he says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm building a cathedral." And when I first heard it, it was like, what are we doing with the great world of agile? We're trying to create a world where people realize and recognize that they're building cathedrals. But Hackman's point was sometimes the job is just building a wall. And if you go telling people it's a cathedral, it's not going to really have the right effect. Um, and that's the reality when you're looking at any ecosystem and landscape. Sometimes there's work that's just building a wall. But it can be pretty interesting as I was listening to you talk about it, thinking about team self selection and the fact that that gives some allowance for that because there might be some teams who are building walls and a self selection process enables people to opt in that direction.
So I'm thinking of sorry, anonymizing. I'm thinking of an infrastructure group at an insurance company I worked with years ago, probably 2009 or 10 timeframe. And it was basic introduction to Kanban type stuff. And these were 5 different teams, 2 to 3 people per team, 15 people in the room that collectively made up networking, servers, storage, whole bunch of like related, critical for the entire organization services. And these guys were some of them had been enrolled for more years than I had been alive at that point. And they took an immense amount of satisfaction in ensuring that the things that they provided were just so. And they served people's needs and met the problems. And yeah, they were aware of the role of selling insurance and how their stuff served insurance, but they weren't there to sell insurance per se. They were there to create a great customer experience for their internal customers. And if you tried to inspire them with the big vision and the strategy of the company, fell flat. And I watched the director in the room try to do so. When you inspired them with the ability to serve their internal customers better and take some of the friction out of coordinating across their different groups and make it so that their internal development customers didn't need to be experts in each of their domains to orchestrate this stuff all together, they suddenly latched onto the idea of a feature and bundling up a request and creating a second level Kanban flow and took ownership of it and drove it because they wanted to see people be happy. And it's the sometimes I think it's the angle you come at things that makes a difference. Why is somebody there? What lights them up about work, and what parts of it?
I agree with that. I like Mark's example too, though, about the bricklayer who's literally there to feed his family. It ties a lot to me since, uh, at least from my perception, since COVID's come out of the amount of um, software engineers, content professionals that have 3 jobs. that's their angle is I have 3 jobs. I'm going to retire when I'm 30 because I will have made enough money because I'm getting 3 salaries at once. They literally don't want to care about the companies that they're working for. And me, I think having room for that in the future, either making for that to make it so that like part of discovering like how you should have your dual operating system allows for that, and that there are particular pieces of work where that is okay, might need to be a thing, or like is that okay to come to work as somebody who builds something inside of a company that may be focused on building something complex and for the future that hasn't been built before, is that okay? Well, I don't know, but I think I think there that we'll need to figure that out. I think that I love the self-team formation. I almost think that's too late in some use cases, because you've already kind of parceled out some value streams and some solutions, and there's some decisions already being made. But if you fundamentally took the approach of like, "Hey, I'm running an organization, there's a lot of different solutions. There's certain solutions where it might be okay if somebody just wants to feed their family, and we're gonna give them the right construct to do so. And then there's this other set of solutions where we need the passion, and the passion might be about building infrastructure. That's still a passion, that's still a vision. It's just not the full piece together vision, and that's totally cool. Um, but the like, how are we building the right people towards the right things, and in the life situation that they've got? Was I loved like the first company I was ever at where that time was actually spent of like meeting with every individual in the organization to say what is your actual foundational reason for working here? What do you want to get to? And some people's foundational reason was I'm trying to build enough money so I can go start a coffee cart. Like that's it.
Mhm.
I really don't care about what we do here. I need to build enough money for that. But if we help them get there, they were dedicated. That was their why.
And I think I don't have any objection to people's big picture why not being like deep passion about the company. I mean, my personal vision statement of helping people sleep better at night and reducing stress is so that people have energy left at the end of the day to go do what drives them and make a difference in the world. But I do believe, regardless of what their why is, we can make work more satisfying and give them things that they enjoy digging into and taking ownership of. Like, I don't think those two things are mutually not compatible.
I don't think they're not compatible. I do think there are people who are choosing to not make a decision that they are at work any more than to put in the lines of code that they're asked for and then do the next thing that they've signed up for and they're getting a full year salary for.
Well, this comes back to strategy. What's the work really at the end of the day? And I think it's one of the challenges. Scale. Are you hiring people who are there because they're passionate, or are you hiring people who need a job? And the bigger the company, the more challenge you have in that balance.
And
On
I
the
still,
over time piece, I I've seen a couple situations over the last 6 months where I can literally tell people are just cashing in, like they're going to the AI tool of choice and putting in input and it puts an output and here's my delivery.
there's pieces of it. So this is where I'm struggling to tease this apart because like there's pieces of it that are essentially unethical. If I'm working three
Mhm.
jobs and I'm claiming false hours and I'm not meeting expectations but taking paychecks, I actually see that as unethical based on my upbringing. And there's totally fair ways to and legitimate ways to work multiple jobs, and I'm not questioning that and the need that people have to survive. Um, but if you're lying about it, if you are doing unethical things in pursuit of that, I have problems with that. Um, but I also I struggle with people like a world of like if we're hiring people that need to have a certain if we're hiring thought workers, people that are in thought working roles, if they're not bringing a certain amount of themselves to work, I don't think they're actually going to be healthy employees for the organization, regardless of the organization. And that's where I struggle with the some of the implications of this conversation. It's like it's okay if work's not your passion. Totally good with that. But I'm not necessarily okay if you show up to collect a paycheck and don't do the work. Don't put the energy into it. And I think part of the energy and knowledge work is that context and that understanding, as opposed to the order taking and the go type these 5 lines.
To be clear from a values perspective, I totally agree with what you just said. I'm really curious, like, what do you do about the prevalence of that value perspective changing so much? Like, it's against the way I was brought up too, but it's not starting to be against the way others are brought up.
Well, it's a lot of stuff out there about the different way that multi work to the way we were all brought up. The
Millennials, I'm a millennial. But
um,
yeah,
where work sits in work-life balance and priorities is really different. I think sometimes it's a question some of us older people recognizing the world shift.
But again, it's not about priorities. I know plenty of great people. I was texting with one today that his reason for working is to collect a paycheck so he can go support the charities and the nonprofits in various countries he wants to support. Like he's earning a living for his family so he can do that work in the world. That's awesome. 100% support that.
Yeah.
same
Don't give
person
me
also
those eyes.
about his company. So
And
I
he's struggling
not
a lot.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
but I don't know. I still struggle. There's a responsibility piece that comes into that. Like he shows up and he puts real work in and he is trying to make things better, even though it's not his passion, his purpose in life.
Yeah.
Even when it's at the edge of defeating him, knowing the side eye that I'm seeing coming off of Rebecca.
I,
trouble with that use case. Keep
I,
going. Oh,
yeah,
But he's not,
yeah.
I'm
and he's
struggling
not
to
the only
avoid
one.
a guessing game as to who you're talking about. Um,
Yeah,
but I mean, this would be
you're supposed
what
to be giving me the note. You're supposed to give me the knowing look and not say anything, Rebecca. Just to be clear.
I mean. There you're just talking about what my parents would have called work ethic,
Hmm. Very much so.
and I don't know that anything the world of what we're trying to help with agile fix a poor work ethic.
And I don't think.
It's the world that we I don't think it's in the way that we write the agile things, but I do think it's in the way that we show up in organizations to communicate what happens where and why. And back to the like cramming tools or techniques down people's throat at the wrong time. I think part of that is there are some human tools and techniques that I think are happening a little too late in the game now, or to your point, like are just not as early a point a conversation or consistent a conversation about what kind of company are you trying to build? Um, do you have the right people in the right bus in the right seats doing the right things? Um, I do think we have responsibility a bit there, um, for not only like making that part of discussions, but also for being open that there is a emerging role that has a different value base, and what does that look like for the future? I've watched a few talks from thought leaders that have like they see a potential future where it is actually okay to have three different full-time things, and you're literally showing up to deliver if it's okay with the way the company's modeled.
I know that
That was a lot. Sorry.
I have to start
I
to
went to
wrap
a weird
up.
place.
So I'm going to pull us out of a weird place
Thank you.
because I'm going to talk about what I think is going to be the highlight of next week is what's
Disney
happening for
World?
me this afternoon. It's not Disney World or Disneyland, but I have a fun workshop at a client this afternoon um, that I'm going to feel guilty about charging because
Having so much
it actually plays back a little bit to the conversation we've just had. So it's an art that is transitioning to team topologies, orientation, and mostly streamlined teams. And they kicked off the journey last PI with a team self selection. They didn't actually switch the teams at that moment. They did a team self selection into the new topology to give themselves a PI to kind of smooth out the transition. And this afternoon is a repurpose of Inspect and Adapt into a launch event before they go into their first PI planning as their new topologies. And
fun.
we're stealing a trick from many years ago for the formation, and everybody's making product boxes. The activity where the product is your team, and you're repurposing the product box activity to that.
Nice.
And it's been an awful lot of fun and surprises every time I've had the chance to facilitate that. We did a prep session last week, and I was in the office there yesterday, and lots of people going, "Mark, can we do this? Mark, can we do this? Mark, can we think outside the box?" So, in the world of people coming together and being creative and having a bit of joy in their lives, I reckon I'm going to see a fair bit of joy.
You said you don't believe in joy. So
No, you are
I'm excited
misconstruing
for
my
you.
comment. You are misconstruing my comment, Rebecca.
Yes, I am. Very intentionally.
Look,
Um,
I believe, I absolutely believe in joy, but I think sometimes you just need some really practical techniques to solve problems. Give you a chance to find the space for joy, and I
yeah,
see a lot of coaches over rotate out of practical
yeah.
in pursuit of the fluff that you don't get with it, obviously. So
That sounds really exciting. I wish I was going to be here for that next week.
I'll share photos.
Yay!
So that's my closing comments. Closing comments from you guys.
I think I'm gonna find and read that quote that I mentioned earlier because I think I like it. So it's in the context of what are the insights I had in the last couple of years and the things I wanted to integrate into my leadership and coaching practice as a result. And the way it came out is one of the things that came out of this and that I'm really trying to integrate and keep integrating into the rest of my practice is the role of hope in the face of futility, the power of joy in the face of apathy, and the role of practices in the face of being paralyzed. And I know that last one doesn't actually feel like the other two, but it kind of is. Like the role of practice is not as a thing we force, but as a tool to help people get unblocked.
Yeah, I like that. That quote somewhere I can reference it.
My brain is very fried, so I don't have amazing closing thoughts like the two of you. Um, so my closing thought is may the force be with you, and I'm probably gonna go to sleep pretty soon after this. So I can have another full day tomorrow.
Well, have a wonderful full day, and I'm going to take us off the air.